Hey, yo, what's up, everybody? Happy Friday Eve. It's your man, Dame DNYDC, host of the Two Mics Up podcast, back again, live. Tonight, we're really going to get into a conversation and a topic that I think a lot of us in our, not just the black and brown community, but in our community, period, and in society, um, we have some troubles. I don't want to say dealing with, but really grasping and getting our hands around and really trying to work through some of these challenges and things that we're dealing with. And tonight's guest, uh, she's an author, a speaker. She really is dialed in to some of these challenges that so many of us, are dealing with. And when I say that, a lot of us have had things that have happened to us in the past coming up as young men and women. Uh, and it's really hard sometimes, as we live here today in the present, really to be free of a lot of the baggage if you would, if you want to say, um, and all that weight that we carry sometimes into our relationships, into our marriages, that really lie subconsciously, that just kind of come out through events that happen. And really, a lot of us don't know where to start. We have different taboos, especially, speaking, and I guess we were speaking, offline, being a Afro Latino, as a black and Hispanic man, the machismo and the things and the stigmas that go on and in our culture and in our society is really hard to kind of work through. And like I'll be honest with you, I know for me at times, it was even scary to kind of walk through the process, and I think a lot of us do, and feel that, as well. So, without really further ado, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to um, work to bring on, hey, what's happening, Miss Cunningham? How you doing? Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm going to bring our guest on, and I'm going to bring this amazing woman on, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to go ahead and let our guest introduce herself to you before we jump in tonight. So I'm going to stop. Nikisha, I'm sorry.
No, you had it,
Yeah,
Nikita.
Nikita.
Yeah,
Okay. Look, I'm getting older. Nikita, would you please go ahead and take a moment and please introduce yourself to our audience?
sure. Hello, everybody. I'm so excited to be here to share with you all. So, like he said, my name is Nikieta Lambert. I am an author. I'm writing my first book called Dear Friend, Get Well.
Woohoo!
It's in the editing process. I'm so excited. Um,
Woo!
I am a speaker. I speak to different groups about the importance of self care, mental health. I'm breaking into the space of speaking to business women and entrepreneurs just to help them realize that the baggage that you carry does not disqualify you from excellence.
Mm.
You can overcome that and pursue greatness in life because those voices that in that dark space will make you feel like you're not supposed to amount to anything, not joy, not profit, not success. You just do your best to survive, and that is not true.
Wow.
Um, I'm also a validation coach. I'm doing one-on-one sessions right now for anyone who's interested. But in 2022, I'm very excited. I'm going to be launching my validation group called The Fold.
Okay.
And that is a place where people can come to receive validation and have a safe space to feel their emotions, to share their experience. Because a lot of times we grew up in an environment that was like, oh, you're too sensitive. Nobody
Mm,
said that to you. Or they change, the adults in our lives will change the smallest details about
mm-hmm.
something. It's like, that's not how I remember it. But they tell you that it happened another way. And so it causes you to question your perception of reality. And this group called The Fold is going to be a place where you can come and say, no, that did happen to you. And you have every right to be sad. You have every right to be mad, and work through that and see what you want to do about it. And so that's me in a nutshell. There's so much more I could share, but it just really comes from a place of like, I grew up with a narcissistic mom. We could talk about what that means later.
Mm-hmm.
I have diagnosed anxiety and depression, also ADHD. I went through postpartum depression. So had a mountain of student debt, and I know what it feels like that you can't get out from under that. And so through hard work, loving relationships, spiritual grounding and centering, I've been able to make it through that and live a life of love and joy. And I
Mm-hmm.
just really want other people to know that it's possible for them too, because for the longest, I didn't even think I could ever be happy,
Mm.
let alone be here on a podcast speaking to people.
Well, you know, first of all, like I said, for me, this when we were doing, some of the background and research, and like I said earlier, I can identify with some of the things as a man that in my upbringing. But you spoke on some things about yourself and your upbringing. So could you just really take a moment and really expand and talk about your background and what was it like? Because we heard about the narcissistic mother and the ADHD, but what was it really like? Because I think there's so many of us that really we identify with it, but we don't claim it or own it.
Mm-hmm.
So could you talk about that?
Sure. So I did have two parents,
Mm-hmm.
but my dad was often gone because he was in the Navy.
Okay.
So a lot of times it was just my sister and me at home with my mom. And I actually pulled up a list. It's on choosingtherapy.com. I'm not going to read all the things, but just a few of the 17 ways that you might know your parent was a narcissist.
Wow.
So displaying sudden mood changes and volatile anger, making poor excuses to limit time together, making you feel anxious and often lowering your confidence, making you feel guilty by boasting about how much they have done for you,
Mm.
making you feel bad for not doing what they want immediately, and then being well liked and important to others, but controlling and harsh when no one is looking.
Wow.
So those are just a few of the things that when my sister sent me something about narcissism, like, hey, I think this is mom, I was like, oh my gosh, it is.
Mm.
And I just went down this rabbit hole. So there was another one on here. I couldn't find it, but it's pretty much like making you, oh, here it is. Being bothered and annoyed when you need time and attention. So with my father being out of the house and we're two little girls, we want time and attention.
Right. Right.
Um, but typically, if I were to ask my mom for anything, say, hey, mommy, what, Nikita? What?
Mm.
And so
Like
it
you,
just makes,
like you're annoying. Shoot, fly,
Mhm,
shoot.
exactly.
Mm.
Um, and so it just makes you feel like you want to be as small as possible. You don't want to need anything. You don't want anything. You try to take care of yourself completely because you don't want to bother mommy. You don't want to make her upset.
Mm-hmm.
And so just being yelled at often for things that kids do. One thing, I got triggered surprisingly at work. I was working in a preschool and I was watching kids go to the trash can to dump their lunch.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, they're little, so their plates are tilting
Right.
down.
Right.
I have memories of trying to walk my plate to the trash or to the sink as a child, and my mom would scream at me,
Wow.
um, stop it, you're gonna drop your food. You're gonna look at what you're doing. And I would be like 5, 6 years old.
Wow.
And as I'm a teacher to these children, I'm thinking, how could you yell at someone that small for doing something that's so age appropriate?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Oftentimes we had to keep secrets from our dad. Like, I remember one time we were talking to my dad on the phone and I mentioned, oh, yeah, we just got done shopping at Walmart. And my mom laid into me for the
Wow.
30-minute car ride on the way home about how I don't need to be telling my father what we're doing. And I just remember thinking, I didn't know we couldn't tell
Right.
our
Right.
father that we went to the store.
Right.
So just you never knew what was safe and what wasn't safe. And so it makes you just not want to say anything to anybody.
So I mean, even in that, and again, because abuse comes in all kinds of forms and shapes and forms. So I mean, at a very young age, you were being verbally abused
Hmm.
and mentally abused.
Yeah.
And I have to ask, like, how were you able to? Well, even before we get to that, I want to know, with all of those things that were going on and that type
Hmm.
of trauma, what was it first that inspired you then to want to pursue your career? And then
Hmm.
how did you get through those traumas? Before I guess you got to your career, or did these things happen simultaneously?
Hmm. Honestly, when I was a child and all the way up until I graduated high school, my main dream was to just move away.
Wow.
It was
Mm,
to move away. And my dream was to make so much money that I could send my mom checks on special occasions and I would
mm,
never have to see her again.
wow.
But she wouldn't be mad that I didn't see her because I sent her money.
Wow.
Yeah, as a middle schooler and high schooler, those were the types of plans I was making for my life.
Mm,
Um, so any dreams that I had then, it was just for being financially successful, having
mm.
power and success, probably because I didn't have any power in my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then my mom was also very manipulative and stingy with the money. As I
Mm,
got older, I was able to put two and two together. Like she would make a big deal out of buying us school supplies, but then she would go out and buy 5 kitchen gadgets.
wow.
I couldn't piece that together then. But when I got older, I'm like, so we had money, some kind of money. You could have let me contribute to the pizza party.
But she chose herself. Sounds
Yes.
like
Hmm.
over her family. In a selfish way.
Hmm.
And again, I'm going to ask too because I hear the young man in the back, and how has that transition then for you now? Being a mom and raising a young child, like
Hmm.
how has those past transgressions and things that you've experienced, what have you done to maybe turn or flip the switch in your uh upbringing of your child?
Mhm. I think definitely entering the field of early education has helped because I received a lot of education
Hmm.
on what is appropriate and how to interact with little people. But so there's two reactions that I feel like are polar opposites kind of. So on one hand, I'm so much more patient.
Mm.
I'm like nurturing and I listen to him and all of these things, but then on the other end, it's like I'm so terrified of
Mm.
making him feel the way that I felt that sometimes my husband has to be like, don't let him play you.
Right, right.
Or Nikita, it's not that deep. And so there was we had the whole debate, do we pop him? Do we not pop him?
Mhm.
Whatever. But then when they start kind of coming into their own, it's like, whatever we decide, you need to know who's boss because this
Right,
is not going to work.
right.
And so I remember, getting stern with him, like really stern for the first time. And I was like, almost traumatized, like, oh my
Oh
god,
my god.
he's gonna think I don't care about what he's thinking or what he has
Yeah,
to say. And
yeah,
so
yeah.
I was telling my husband, how I was so afraid that I had shut him off from me forever.
Mhm,
Meanwhile, my husband says it doesn't look like it
mhm.
because as I'm talking to him, my son is sitting on my lap eating an apple,
Yep, yep.
smiling.
Eh,
Like
it's
I just
it's
read
so
too much
true.
into it.
It's so true. Hey, Carl, thanks for joining us, my brother. Really appreciate you. Yes, Thank you. This is really a great discussion, and
Oh,
we really
thanks.
appreciate it. I know that feeling that you speak about. So I remember once, and I don't my daughter, I don't know, she in the woods somewhere or not. Um, and she was, I don't know, maybe 7, 8, I don't know. And her and her cousins were here, and they were just really getting into it. You would have thought, it was like a zoo upstairs in the house. They was just crashing and bash, all over the place. And my wife just looked at me, and I said, "All right, you know what? Because as a husband, when your wife give you that look, it's only downhill for you until you take care of it." So I went got this little wooden spoon, and I called myself going to go take care of my daughter and my niece and all of them, and it killed me. I mean, I was inside. I was like a bowl of Jello,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I probably hit my daughter all of that much.
Right.
She put on a production. She was screaming, hollering. Oh my God, you would have thought. So my wife comes up like, "Listen to me. What you do?" And I was like, I didn't do nothing. All I did was tap her with the spoon. Well, you had to hit her harder, So now I'm feeling worse because now my daughter crying is killing me because I had to go I didn't put my hands on my daughter, but I put my hands on my daughter.
Right.
So I know the feeling. And then 20 minutes later, like you said, she's downstairs. She's sitting on my lap, hugging me. We eating popcorn or whatever, doing whatever, like it never happened. So I know that feeling. A-
Uh,
And, look, I know it's good that you and your husband are having those conversations. You probably know better than I do. I'm from the old school. Popping was good. I turned out okay. I lived through some memorable moments that I like
memorable moments.
they
That's a nice way to put it.
some memorable moments. But we're gonna leave them there. But I have to ask too. Um, you know, along the way, none of us can really achieve some type of success, whether it be in relationships, dealing with kids, trauma. Um, for you, was there a particular person, maybe who you felt like gave you some encouragement? Um, to be or to become who you are today? And if there is, can you talk about that?
You are trying to make me cry on this
Oh,
podcast.
oh.
So, whenever somebody asks this question, I always shout out my husband.
Awesome.
I got diagnosed with anxiety and depression maybe like 2 weeks before we got married.
Wow.
So, yeah, on one hand, it's like, okay, we've got some answers. But
Hmm.
then on the other hand, it's like, well, what does this mean?
Mm.
Because this was back in 2014. And I feel like over the last few years, mental health awareness has had an explosion.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
in 2014, it still was just kind of like, we're feeling around. Like, what does this mean? And so through our first years of marriage, going to therapy, coming home, crying, because in therapy, most of the time it gets worse before it gets better.
Hmm.
Um, trying different medications and the side effects from those, dealing with my mom and her increased presence, because she couldn't handle that somebody else was important in my life.
Hmm.
And so, and then just feeling down on myself. I think it was a combination of depression and also the medication, but I put on a lot of weight in our first year or two of marriage. And it got to the point where I didn't even want to change my clothes in front of my husband anymore. But he was always there to tell me, like, you're going through this because you're going to be able to help people in
Mm.
the future.
Okay.
Like,
Facts.
you need to experience this so you can relate to even more people. Because I
Hmm.
always wanted to help people, but it's just demoralizing when you can't get out of bed. You're looking at yourself like, how am I supposed to help anybody? I cannot even make it to work without crying.
Hmm.
And so he was always there to remind me, like, this is who you are. This is where you're going to get. It's just hard right now. I still find you beautiful. Or even just to ask the questions, what do you need from me right now? So we were learning together. I would send him articles. He's sending me articles, and we're learning, what does this mean and what can we try? And so, even now, it's funny, earlier in the podcast, he was on the other side of the camera taking behind the scenes footage.
Hey, that's a good guy right there. I mean,
Yeah.
I love it when you have support, because we all need that rock. to help us through challenging times. And for me, it's been my wife, and I thank the Lord, for blessing me and having her in my life. It's made a huge world of difference.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I do want to just kind of change lanes for a quick second. So, with everything that you've had to endure,
Mm-hmm.
how have you been able to create, that life that you really enjoy living? Because I've seen and I've read, through some of your things that you worked on, like this is really, to me, like an underlying message that you try to deliver.
Yeah. I would say the two biggest things that I did learn from therapy are learning how to communicate assertively. So, when you have a childhood like mine,
Hmm.
your voice is squashed.
Right.
And so you're not confident speaking up about things that you don't like or that you want. You just kind of go with the flow, let other people decide. And so I got more assertive when saying, like, I actually don't want to go there. I don't
Hmm.
want to do that. I like it like this, or, whatever. And so in that way, I started reclaiming my life and figuring out what do I care about and what do I want to speak up about. And in addition to speaking assertively, learning how to set and maintain boundaries.
Mm.
And a lot of times people confuse boundaries with ultimatums.
Good point.
But an ultimatum it involves consequences. Like, you do this for me, or I'm going to do this or take this away.
Right.
A boundary is pretty much just letting people know this is how we can operate successfully in this relationship.
Hmm.
If you choose not to operate in these, then we just can't interact here, or we can't interact
Good
like
point.
that. And
Hmm.
I'm not punishing you, I'm protecting me. I'm not taking anything away from you except your access to me.
Hmm.
Um, and if you view that as a punishment, you need to work that out with yourself.
I was just going to say 'cause that's a very, very good point. I never looked at it from that standpoint. I think a lot of us we get defensive off the break when you say a word like boundaries
Mhm.
and things of that nature. So it becomes very personal. But I do hear what you're saying. Sometimes though, it's really necessary for us in some of the things that we're dealing with, whether it be work, relationships, family, whatever it may be.
Mhm.
Sometimes there's just certain people or certain triggers, if you want, that you have to set up a boundary so
Mhm.
that the other person or persons or whatever it may be has a clear understanding. Because if you don't do that for yourself, then you just get swallowed up. Correct?
Yes, exactly. And that's where a lot of us we're used to having our boundaries trampled over.
Mm,
And so
mm,
that's how we move in our personal relationships. That's how we move at work. That's how we move with family. And they just get to talk about all these things in our personal lives that we don't want to talk about with them.
mm-hmm,
And so between the speaking assertively and the setting the boundaries,
mm-hmm,
it really does help you to create the life that you want to be living and not
mm.
living life on other people's terms.
I think that's important. That was a real gem right there. So Nikita, I'm trying to figure out, you know, listening to all of this, right? For someone maybe on the other side who is not sure, and everything that you're laying down, I'm understanding and I'm grasping, but some of us may not, only because we don't know where or how to start,
Hmm.
um, taking the first steps towards healing.
Okay.
Um, how how did you figure yours, and what can you share with maybe someone who's watching or listening to us
Hmm.
right now?
Whew. So it's all a blur. That time of life, it was so dark. I would say going to therapy definitely was my starting ground.
Hmm.
Um, and sometimes that was frustrating because they're just really good at asking you questions
Right.
and you don't necessarily receive solutions right away because that's not how healing works. But you do want a solution.
Right.
And so, what I've done to help people with that is I put together a guide called the Month of Mending,
Hmm.
and it's a 30-day guide. And I've pieced together everything that I've learned over the last 7 years through therapy, through my own research, through trial and error. And I've put it together in bite sized chunks. You do a little activity each of the 30 days, and it helps you to get in touch with the sources of your pain and then also gives you very manageable activities and exercises to do each day to help you sort them out. And so I actually created that because I remembered the frustration of feeling like, I just wish somebody would tell me what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not saying that this will cure you,
Right, right.
but it provides you with insight and some momentum to get things going.
So I want to, because you brought up another valid point, like this register or went off in my head, because we do a lot of times we just want the short, quick answer. Like
Mm-hmm.
we want all the answers to the test before we take the test, right?
Right.
And the work that goes into it. And listening to what you're saying about, the month of mending. So these exercises, are they really designed, and hey, I'm gonna before I get into that, I'm gonna jump into Carl's question because I think this is a great question. Carl is asking, how long was your journey from realizing that you had real problems until you got to a point where you felt that you could understand and positively manage your issues?
Let's see. I
Great
would
question, Carl.
say it's a little loaded.
Okay.
So I would say 3 years
Wow.
until I got to a point where I felt like I could manage positively. Even though now I started feeling good, but as I look back, I still didn't have a great grasp on boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so then at 3 years, I had a baby. I came
Wow.
off my medication, so I could feel, safe that
Right.
I wasn't impacting the baby with anything I was taking. And then I had postpartum depression.
Mm.
So then that was a whole other thing. Um, and so then you add another 3 years on top of that,
Wow.
and this is where I am. So it was 6.5, 7 years before I started actually thinking, okay, I'm going to write the book and I'm going to start speaking.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I mean,
So,
great question, Carl. I appreciate you asking that. And again, like I'm in my mind, I'm hearing all of these things. Like say, with the month of mending, it doesn't take you to the shorter because everybody's really got. Some of us feel we have the same issue,
mm,
but our journeys are different. So the way
right.
that we get to it may be different. So this your month of mending, um, does it provide maybe aha moments or situations where it may force you or direct you maybe to go seek certain types of counseling or to see doctors? Like, can you get a little more detail about maybe some of the questions or tasks that are in the month of mending?
Sure. So there's only one activity in the month of mending, I think, that where I suggest that someone go get therapy, and that's one of the journaling prompts. And it's
Okay.
because I do encourage you to think deeply about
Mm-hmm.
what it is that is actually bothering you. Stop running from it. You can't
Mm.
heal it if you're unwilling to feel it, right?
Right. Right.
And so I do add a little footnote in there like, hey, if you start experiencing these symptoms, you may want to reach out to a professional because those are
Mm-hmm.
symptoms of signs of re-traumatization.
Right.
And, I wouldn't want anybody to be feeling that alone without guidance, proper guidance. So, um, but the other things, there are journaling prompts, there's challenges to get physical because physical activity is really good for stress relieving. It's one of the most proven ways to get stress out of your body.
Mm-hmm.
um, Prompts to go to bed at a certain time. There's a TED, not a TED talk. Yes, a TED talk that I put in there that I ask people to go watch and look at, and things like that. So there are more reflective pieces, there are introspective pieces, and there are things that you're doing more outwardly. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's a nice mix of deep and light. And
Mm-hmm.
so even on days where there's a heavy journaling prompt, the next day is to just sit and meditate for about 10 minutes
Wow.
because you're probably still reeling
Read
from
like
what happened the
yeah.
next day, the
Yeah.
previous day. And so that's one thing that I see in a lot of journals and guides, that they
Mm-hmm.
just kind of keep piling on the depth.
Yep. Yep.
And now do this, and now do this. And
Right.
that's like,
Right.
whoa, I'm still,
You still dealing with what was going on yesterday, or
yeah,
heck, 5 minutes ago, because you thought about it from yesterday. So yeah,
exactly.
it really is. And Carl has So Carl's at so many people ruin relationships because they're not ready to get help. Man, amen to that, brother. It's sad because we can see so much good in them, but they don't see what we see. And very valid points because everything Carl is talking about, I think we talked about off air. These are some of the things that I saw in myself
Mm-hmm.
coming up, being raised by a single parent and things that we talked about in what we talked about earlier. Carl's asking, what advice do you have for the person who has not yet taken the steps to get help in healing?
Well, I would say get the month of mending because it's a very easy place to start. It's like the bumpers on the bowling.
Hmm.
There's a
Yep.
lot of wiggle room in there.
Right.
Also, I would just encourage them to have a heart to heart with their significant other.
Mm,
That really helped me when I was not consistent in taking my medication or not consistent in setting up my counseling
right.
appointments. When my husband shared with me, like, it's really hard to watch you like this.
Mm,
And when you're not on top of the things you need to be doing, it shows me that you're not serious about getting better,
wow.
which directly impacts him because I'm treating him like crap. Not
Yep.
because I want to, but because those are my go-to methods of
Hmm.
healing. My
Right.
mom, whenever she didn't like something I did, she didn't talk to me for days. One time she didn't talk
Right.
to me for 2 months.
Mm,
Like,
right.
um, so this is what I'm bringing, or passive aggression and things like
Yeah.
this. And so, or clamming up and shutting down. And so it's literally affecting his quality of life when I'm choosing not to get myself together. And so, because I love him, that heart to heart really helped me to kind of snap out of it and like,
Right.
okay, there's even more than me getting better. When I'm not enough motivation, I look at
So look
him
at
and
him.
he is my motivation. Like,
Yeah.
I want to be better for him. So
Mm,
I would say if you're in a relationship, have a heart to heart with the significant other. And that just means the significant other needs to be willing to be honest.
yeah. And participate and be
Mhm.
honest. And
Yeah.
engage in making the change because, like you said, it does impact both of you.
Mhm.
So it takes two willing and engaging participants. So right here, before we continue, we're gonna pause for the cause and jump into the break. But ladies and gentlemen, those of you who are still here, watching, stay tuned because we're gonna come back. Nikita, she's working on a book that she mentioned earlier. We're going to try to dispel maybe some myths about finding joy and happiness. And I want to talk about medication briefly because I think, again, we have myths and different things when people talk about medication dealing with mental health and traumas and triggers and things like that. So
Mhm.
um, we're going to jump into all of that, but we're going to do that when we come right back after the break. All right, everybody, and we're back. It's your man, Dame DNYDC, host of the Two Mics Up podcast. Sitting down, chopping it up with Nikieta Lambert. This sister, she's a author, life coach, inspirational speaker, mom. She got all the hats and everything going on. And we just really sitting here chopping up, man. We really just talking about healing, healing, mental health. And I know your focus a lot of times on what you deal with, Nikita, is dealing with young, women and things of that nature. But I find it so enlightening because I think men, and I think my brother Carl, who's been asking some questions, we can relate to this too. And I think we're probably the, I don't want to say victims, but we're probably the worst at sharing
Mm,
our problems.
mm-hmm.
So I'm glad that if we have any men out here listening and watching, please don't be afraid to reach out to Nikita. I mean, any I said this prior to coming on the show. If there's one person that gets anything out of tonight's show, and can go seek help or find some type of assistance, then tonight's show was well worth it. This is a discussion that I think a lot of times we hide or shy away from in our community. And I don't mean just the black and brown community. I mean in our community, period, as human beings, society.
Mm.
This is really an issue that really impacts so many of us. So I thank you again, Nikita, for sitting here and taking time out of your schedule to just kind of talk to me and talk to our audience. But I do want to jump into one thing that I do want to, you mentioned earlier, you know, trying to dispel, maybe some myths, um, where, misconceptions, right? And what are
Mm-hmm.
some of the main myths that maybe you think or you see that people talk about, uh, or, when it comes to finding joy, happiness, or
Mm-hmm.
releasing that pain? And Carl, I see your question. I'm going to bring your question up after we have this one here, my brother.
I think one of the biggest things is that if you dig deep enough and try hard enough, you can be happy in any circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, I think you can find contentment. I think you can try to find some peace, but sometimes you just have to make hard decisions in your life to change your circumstances. You need to
Mm-hmm.
create different circumstances to help you be happy. If your job is really draining on your mental health,
Mm-hmm.
put time and energy and effort into trying to figure out how to get another one. If there is a person who is causing you agony,
Mm-hmm.
um, figure out how to get away from them. And that's hard because sometimes people
Mm.
message me and they're like, I live with my mom. I can't get away from her. Um,
Wow.
and so it's thinking, can you spend more time outside of the house? Is
Mm.
there like, or, and it's so awful to say. But one thing that I talk about a lot that always gets a really big response on my Instagram. So my mom passed away in 2016.
Wow.
And I just talk about how free I have been
Wow.
since then.
Wow.
Um, and so a lot of that resonates with a lot of people whose moms
Mm.
are still there. And they, again, that validation, they have a place to say, no one understands, or I've never been able to say this, but I can't wait until I don't have to
Wow.
deal with my mom anymore. And that, for anyone who doesn't know, that sounds harsh.
Horrible. Yeah, it sounds harsh and horrible. Yeah, it
It
does.
really
Really
does.
does.
But it is, life with a narcissist as a parent is a living hell.
Mm.
Um, my mom came up because I moved from South Carolina to Virginia, and that's where I got married. When I was engaged towards the wedding, my mom came up for the last couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And after she left, my new mother-in-law said, I now tell everyone that when you talk about your mom, you are not exaggerating.
Mm.
Because people would think like it can't be that bad, or everyone has mommy daughter issues. She's like, no, it's really bad. Everything you said was true.
Wow.
And at that time, I wasn't even speaking as freely as I am now. Then I was speaking more out of fear. I was afraid of her.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Wow. Man.
yeah.
Whew. Man, that one right there was deep. So Carl had a question. Carl's asked, what makes a hurting person so adverse to getting help? Hurting people seem to fight those that are trying to love, help, and guide them. Carl's asking, Nikita, can you explain that dynamic? He believes, believe me, many folks want to know, the answer to this, if there's an answer.
Hmm.
Can you kind of talk to that?
Yeah. I actually have a segment in my book that's about this, and it's called Defeating Despair.
Mm,
And when you are in a state of despair, a hopelessness, it's almost like being in the fear and the darkness that you know
mm-hmm,
is more comfortable than trying to get to the joy and the healing that you don't know.
Wow.
And then another part that is scary about that is people hurting people are usually used to having good things taken away from them.
Hmm.
And so that's another heartache. Like, I don't want to get my hopes up to think that something could go right and then it just fails. Or
Wow.
what if I have all of these people trying to help me and I'm just the screw up? I
Hmm.
don't get better. And that's part of the reason why I'm making a validation group and not so much a coaching group, because there's pressure. There's pressure to perform.
Right.
Um and so those are some of the reasons. Of course, hurting people are not a monolith. We don't all have the same answers. I can't speak on behalf of everyone, but those are just a few reasons why. And then also trust issues that
Mm.
could be in there too. Like, do you
Hmm.
really want to help me? Are you going to be judging me? What's your MO? So there's a whole Rolodex of reasons there could be.
Yeah, yeah, never lied on that one. Thank you, Carl. Great questions, man. I really
Hmm.
appreciate you. Because there are a lot of people that I agree. Uh, Sometimes, we sit in the woods, we're afraid to ask or comment. But I really appreciate you, asking, some really awesome questions. So,
Yes.
Nikita, I wanna change lanes. Then again, want to switch up real quick. Let's talk about the book.
Okay.
I'm gonna go ahead and I will please share with us and our listeners, where you are with the book, what the book's about, where they can find it, where we can get it, and what can we really expect to learn or receive from you in the book.
Okay. So the title of the book is called Dear Friend, Get Well.
Okay.
It is not get well soon because, as I shared with you, it did not happen soon. It did not happen
Right.
fast, and I don't want people to feel that pressure. There's so much pressure to get well, and so it's just dear friend, get well. And the first half, it's in two parts, and the first half of the book is just an overview of wellness and self care,
Hmm.
mental care, physical care, professional care, and what was the other one? Mental, physical, professional, spiritual. There's my husband helping me.
There you go,
That's
right on time.
Yeah, we were talking offline about how my son is stealing all my sleep these days. So my
Right.
brain froze. Anyway, and spiritual. Yes, all of those in the first part. And then the second part of the book is self-care in special times, because it's not always going to look the same. So there's a chapter on grieving. There's a
Hmm.
chapter on when you're pregnant. There's a chapter on when you have a chronic illness. And so just how to take care of yourself during those different special seasons of life.
Hmm.
Um, and so again, this was just birthed out of it's pretty much the book that I wish I had
Okay.
when I was going through it, wanting to know, like, where is the hope? What can I do? What is practical? And then also someone who's relatable. I find when it comes to mental health and self care, there are kind of these two camps where either you are just always talking about how much life sucks and it's so dark and like,
Hmm.
oh my gosh, can you relate to my pain?
Yep.
Or then you have the people who are always rise and shine, rise and grind. Life is so great. I'm
Right.
100% healed. Hit me up
Right.
in my DM if you want to be healed like me. I'm going and hiking a mountain because
Right.
I'm also
Right.
fit. Um, and I'm like, I can't, I'm tired just looking at you. And so I'm right in the middle where it's not only self-help, but it's also like a memoir where
Hmm.
I'm sharing stories from my life, some really personal stories. Um, so yeah, where is the book right now? It's in the editing phase.
Okay.
And you told me earlier that you're like the uncle at the cookout. I'm feeling that vibe. So I'm going to tell you some information I don't tell everybody.
Okay, let's do it. Go ahead, let's do it right here.
I'm in the self-publishing and it is so expensive to get a good editor. And so honestly, we're waiting on some funds too.
Right,
So if
right.
anybody wants to donate to the cause, I'm accepting. I'm not doing
Hey,
crowdfunding though, but if anybody is generous and would like to, then
so we're gonna make sure that before we go, you're gonna give all your information. And those of you, who are listening, whether it be live tonight with us, if you come back later on and tomorrow, later on in the week, and you watch this live or watch this video, on our YouTube channel, help support a sister. No, and I mean it's real because like I said, we're doing so many. We have so many talented people and so many talented uh, things that are going on outside of athletics and the rap game and the music game. These are the type of things that for me, I find important here on the show. I think others find it important, and do what you can to help. It doesn't, I tell anybody, look, $5 goes a long way.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you're working to build and give, it goes a long way. Yeah, exactly. It does. Right. It sounds amazing. Please, we'll make sure that she gives her information before we close out, before we leave today. Trust me, we're not going to let Nikieta leave without doing that. Um, so I want to move into one other or one or two other things
Okay.
before we go. So I know you have a thing, because it's funny, like, and I don't know, sometimes great minds, something called 12 Days of Christmas.
Yeah.
Um, you know, uh, Before I go, Carl had a comment. Yes, it
Oh,
is. It
thanks,
is. Yeah,
Carl.
it never lied, man. It's is much more than needed. So thank you, Carl, for dropping that comment. I was talking about you have a thing, 12 Days of Christmas.
Yeah.
Um, we here too at Two Mics Up. We're putting together a 12 Days of Christmas. We're looking for do a
We were meant
virtual.
to come
See,
together.
this is what I'm saying.
Look
Like
at
this is
that.
like how ironic. Like some of these things, like the Lord just moves in mysterious ways. We're looking to put on a virtual holiday event for those who are, shops or whatever. And sometimes you're looking for that miscellaneous item, like that one thing that just odd or oddity. And we want to allow some vendors to come on and sell here on the show on a couple of Thursdays during November. But please talk to us about your 12 Days of Christmas and what this holiday experience is all about.
Okay, yes, this holiday experience, the 12 days of Christmas, it was spawned out of, wanting to do something to help people who deal with seasonal depression, seasonal affective disorder. When the days get shorter, the nights get longer, we receive less vitamin D. And vitamin D is something that helps to keep our mood stabilized and keep our mood up. And so when we don't have that sunlight, our moods go down and it gets
Hmm.
really, really bad for some people. I have some friends who, as soon as the summer starts ending, they start getting almost paranoid and full of fear because they know
Yeah.
the emotional darkness that is
Yep.
coming. That it used
Yep.
to be that way for me as well.
Wow.
Um, and so I get it. And so with the 12 days of Christmas, you go on my site, you purchase the package, you give me the address of the person you want the gifts to go to. And all throughout the month of December, not 12 days in a row, but 12 sporadic days between December 1st and December 26th, they receive 12 different gifts on 12 different days that are
Nice.
centered around self-care and mental health. So there's a light box, a Luminoptics light box that simulates sunlight that helps with your mood.
Hmm.
There's a Casper pillow, which I did my research, and that's one of the top rated pillows. So to
Wow.
promote good sleep and rest as you snuggle up in the bed. um, Tea, soap from Lush USA, which, if you're not familiar with Lush, they are an amazing
Hmm.
brand. A face oil, a body oil, a scalp massager. One, it feels good, it promotes circulation, but then it also encourages the upkeep of personal hygiene
Hmm.
because it's something we don't like to talk about. But when you are depressed, your hygiene slips.
Right.
Candle, a journal, and other things like that. And so it's just something fun to let someone know that you're thinking of them all month long and promote their mental and emotional well being.
Wow.
And you pay for it, and I send it off. You don't even have to worry about it after that.
I love it. I love it. So, again, uh, all whoever may be listening or watching, again, I think it's a great gift. One, you're really, I don't want to say attacking, but you're covering so many great things that a lot of us may be dealing with or need: sleep, mental health, hygiene. And I think these are all great gifts because, like I said, you're getting 12 days, sporadic days. Something's
Mhm.
going to show up at your door. Now, who doesn't like getting a gift? Right?
Right?
Who doesn't
Right?
like that? So I think it's a great idea. And again, we'll let you share your website information and all your other information before we go.
Okay.
And we can hopefully, some of our audience will reach out and support not only the book, but the 12 days of Christmas that you're also doing through your promo and your company. Last thing,
Okay.
And I think this is important because I'm curious to know if there was one message that you could share with someone, or you would want someone to walk away with, who maybe has experienced some type of trauma.
Hmm.
What is maybe one thing that you would share or want them to walk away with from listening to tonight's conversation?
That one thing definitely is that joy can be yours.
Mm,
Joy is for you.
wow. Yeah.
I just know what it is to not even be able to imagine what it would be like to be happy. I used to cry when I got up in the mornings before I even got out of bed. Just the
Mm,
thought of living the day, I
wow.
would just cry. And now when I wake up, even when it's dark, I'm like singing with my son. Not
Mm,
every day, not every day.
right. 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 Right.
But it's not uncommon. I'm not crying.
Right.
And there's like joy and laughter and yeah, so I would just say joy can be yours. And if you feel like I can't relate or if you've got it bad, hit me up in my DMs and it's not a competition, but we can swap some stories.
Hey, and that's sometimes that's what you need. You need that conversation. Like I said, well, talking before we came on air, I felt, like I said, like I told you, I felt connected, just reading,
Mm,
but then just talking off air, similarities and culture and things of that nature. So uh, it's a breath of fresh air for me. I'm going to continue to be a supporter and a follower.
thank you.
Uh, I really enjoy what you're doing. I think just like Carl and many others, who may have chimed in tonight, feel the same way in our community, our society as a whole really needs uh, more individuals like yourself who are giving of themselves and really
Mm.
pouring out of themselves into others, which is really needed. Before we go, Nikita, like I said, I'm going to allow you to take a couple of minutes to please share your social media website. uh 12 days, give us the whole rundown again. I want to make sure that like I said, anybody watching tonight or anybody who's going to follow later on can get your information, and I will make sure to update the link to tonight's show with all your information so that those can come back and follow along and get that information at a later date.
Sure. You can email me at hello@nikitalambert.com. That's my emails. On Facebook, I am facebook.com/Nikita Lambert. And then Instagram is my main home, but that's only because I don't get that much love on Facebook. So if you're on Facebook and you want me to interact, hit up my page. I'll definitely talk back. I check it. I just don't get that much love over there. But that's facebook.com/Nikita Lambert. And then on Instagram, it's just at Nikita Lambert. I try to keep it real basic, real simple, real easy to follow me. And those are I have a TikTok. It's at Nikita Lambert, but it's Instagram now has videos that are kind of like TikTok. I can't be
Yeah,
making videos for TikTok and for Instagram. I mean, yeah,
yeah.
TikTok, and it's a lot right now. It's a
It's
lot.
it,
So,
it's a lot. It's a lot out here in the social media game. Um, I try to stay in
oh
my
wait,
lane. Yes, go right
sorry, I
ahead.
have a YouTube channel.
Do it.
It's
Let's
it's
go.
new. And you just search my name on YouTube. Yes, Nikita Lambert. You see my channel, it'll pop up. Oh, one thing you might be interested in. It seems to be the crowd favorite so far. I was challenged by my therapist to write a letter to my mom and like let it go.
Wow.
And then I was told by a grief specialist that to really seal the deal, it helps to read it out loud to someone.
Hmm.
So I read the letter to my mom and posted it on my YouTube. And
Wow.
that seems to resonate with a lot of people. So you can head over there if you want to see that.
Wow. Yeah, I'm gonna definitely check that out. Look, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here, you watched it here. Another great guest, another amazing live brought to you tonight. Two mics up. Our guest Nikieta Lambert. Nikieta, thank you so much again. Speaking of Nikieta and her 12 days, two mics up. Like I said, we're also putting together a 12 days of Christmas, a virtual event. So anybody who knows anybody who's looking to sell or promote their product online, who's got an elevator pitch and that's ready to go, that's not scared, for a small registration fee, we'll go ahead. Throughout the month of November, we're looking for about 24 vendors. We give you about 10 minutes here on the show. We'll go ahead, chop it up, let you go ahead and give some feedback, sell you. Yes indeed. Thank you, ma'am. Yes indeed. Thank you,
Thank you,
Nikki.
Carl.
And we're gonna allow you to sell and promote right here on the show. So anybody knows anybody that's looking for an opportunity to go live and sell. We're not just here in the DMV. We've been blessed to be nationwide. We're in Canada, Mexico,
All right.
several other countries. Yeah, I mean, we got some legs going here on Two Mics Up. So I'm gonna stop talking and check this promo out real quick. All right, so you know what it is. Tell somebody, tell a friend, tell your family. Holla at us for the holidays. Come have some fun. Like we always do, you can follow Two Mics Up online at www.twomicsup.com. You can follow us across social media, IG, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Two Mics Up. If you're here, you're new to the show, go ahead, hit that subscribe button down there at the bottom. Make sure you hit that bell over there in the corner so you can be notified of all the newest content coming to you live from Two Mics Up. Like we always do at this time, ladies and gentlemen, stay safe, stay blessed. Mics out.